I met Asha Siad in 2017 in the first conference for migration and media awareness in Hamburg. I noticed her first from her work, a very sweet but also informative short film about the first days of the refugees' welcome procedure in Canada.
Thì sana ani. Đến khi nào?
I still remember a scene where a refugee from Africa saw and felt for the first time in his life snow. At that time, I had an interview for the OAIN's project Radio Global. Unfortunately, the interview was never aired.
Aya. Yuhu. Bwana Ari nako byera cyane. We Fabi. 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 Fayo.
Kandi mwe
Nichumvi skwali. Skwali kweli. None meye. Rogi biro.
nakira refuse. Nzaguru. Oh, dagali.
No. La kadar. La shanda kadar ya. To. Nil kete dia garing. Baru. Thank you. Yeah. Jam berapa? Asyara berapa? Hari kan? Hari kan?
Asha Siad is a Somali-born but Canada-raised journalist and filmmaker with lots of awards for a young age. Until now, she had 3 films, all connected in a way with a migration, and she will start also her 4th film with another concept. I had a nice talk with her during the 2nd Conference of Migration and Media Awareness in Hamburg on October 2021 for the We Migrants initiative.
19 days.
19. I can remember the 90 days. This integration process, not the welcome process.
Yes, refugee resettlement process, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The welcome process in Canada.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I remember that. I will also show this interview together with what we do now. Now you have a new film.
Yes.
What's about this film? Explain.
Yes. So this new film is called Memories of Mogadishu, and it's a short documentary about the memories of Mogadishu from the older generation of the Somali diaspora in Canada. So this film takes place in a photo studio where I interviewed 12 members of the Somali diaspora who were former airline pilots, former government officials, former doctors, former printing press operators. So different types of people who were living in Mogadishu at the time before the war. And so I brought them together to talk about what their life was like before the war and after, because they all moved to Canada 30, 40 years ago because of the conflict.
So there are first generation migrants
Yes.
in Canada. You were born in Canada, or
I was born in Mogadishu, Somalia,
but you
during
were
the war, yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so for my own story,
What's your memories?
my memory, that's the thing, I have no memory of Mogadishu, and so many young Somali diaspora who have the same story as I do, leaving at a young age Somalia, or being born in Canada or Germany or Italy, they don't have that history or that memory of what Somalia was like before the war. The Somalia that they know is the Somalia that everyone else knows, you know, in mainstream media about, you know, the conflict and the war, and death and violence. And so I never had an idea. And so my parents didn't really talk to me too much about Somalia because, you know, when you're new refugees to the country. Yes.
Do you think generally the refugees don't want to talk about the past to the new generation, or is just from your parents' side this thing?
Well, not really, not wanting to talk about it. Of course, you know, they share stories here and there, but there's little time to reminisce about the past because, you know, they're in a new country. They have 7 children. They're trying to integrate in society. They're working, you know, labor jobs, right? To help, you know, they're making sacrifices to help their kids live the American dream, the Canadian dream, the European dream, you know, of coming here, getting an education, being able to contribute to society here. And so they didn't have that luxury of time to reminisce. And so that's the information and the context a lot of young Somali diaspora have been missing of who they are and that identity.
What did you find out through those stories? Did you find something common?
Yes. So this film is part of a bigger project called the Memories of Mogadishu Initiative. And so in 2014, I met a woman named Shireen Ramzan Ali Faisal, who is a Somali writer, and she was exiled from Mogadishu in 1970. And she's not gone back since. She's been away for over 50 years. And with her story, she actually, she was the first writer, Somali writer, to write about the war unfolding from outside the country. So when she was in Italy, she was watching the news and seeing, you know, her country just in flames. And so she ended up grabbing a book and writing all her memories of all the good things of Mogadishu, and it became a book called Far From Mogadishu. So I went and read her book, and I got all of the information and the context that, you know, the stories my parents and others couldn't share with me. I got all of that information in her book. And then I set off to interview with the older generation and more Somali diaspora. And I think what I learned through their stories is how beautiful and cosmopolitan Mogadishu was at the time and how it was so diverse. You know, there were Russians, there were Chinese people, there were Germans, there were Tunisians, there were Pakistani. Shireen is actually half Somali, half Pakistani. She was born in the 1950s, so you can see how diverse Mogadishu was. And so it started to rebuild this country for me, the city, through memories. And so the project, the whole idea is to rebuild and restore, because a lot of people have suffered trauma from, you know, the war and post-traumatic stress disorder, and are still healing from what's happened. So,
is this whole project from your side? What gives to you this thing? I mean, what? Okay, it's another film, but it's not just another film for you. For you personally, what does it mean?
For me personally, I feel this project means that, you know, for example, in Somalia, my grandparents passed away a few years ago, and we never got to meet them. You know, my mom, she went actually back to Mogadishu a few years ago, and it was the first time for her in 25 years to see her mother and father. And so it was really heartbreaking for us, you know, when we lost our grandparents who were in Somalia, and with that, we lost that history, that memory, of those things. And now today, I'm going out and interviewing other diaspora's grandparents, you know, to help them keep the memory, to archive the memory of their
They're
life.
becoming your grandparents, let's
Yes,
say.
they're becoming my grandparents in a sense. And so capturing and collecting these memories so that when this older generation is passes away and moves and everything happens, we've got this, we still have their archives, we still have their memories so that it can let the younger generation and the next generation know what Somalia was really like, what Mogadishu was really like before the war.
Do you think that the next generation has the same interest as you of what happens in Somalia? I mean, probably you know other young Somalians that they were, have the interest to know what happened there and what do they feel themselves connected with the home?
Yes, for sure. Now with social media, we've got Instagram. There's young people who are capturing vintage Somalia, so old photos, from Google, and they put it on their Instagram pages, and that's a way to connect with old photos. So people say, "Wow, this is what they used to wear back then." Through music as well, cultural music, people are getting involved. I also have friends who are in the archive space. So there's a project called the Somali Architecture Project, which does 3D images of old buildings in Mogadishu, and they use 3D images to bring these buildings back to life. And I have another friend, Abira Hussein, who is a digital archivist, and she uses augmented reality, so Google Glasses, to look at like cultural objects through virtual reality. So this just shows that young people are now coming with new tools to remember what the past was like and using this emerging technology to capture these stories.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. Also, the use of technology in that kind of in the memories of refugees.
Yes.
That's really, really, really very interesting. What else has your film show? I mean, okay, it's the memories, but are you trying also to lead in a, let's say, in a message, or it's just this thing there?
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh yes, for sure. So the film, it's in almost 3 parts. So we talk about before the war, and you hear them talking about what their life was like before the war, calling Mogadishu the pearl of the Indian Ocean, saying it was a place that could be a heritage site, right? And then it goes to the middle where it's the war, and everyone tells you how they escaped, or how they escaped the war. There was a printing press operator who said, 40 years of having all of this, he actually was his printing press was the heart of the city. He was able to print textbooks and newspapers for all of Somalia with this printing press shop. And for him, he had 40 years of experience and this and some of these print basically these I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
Basically. It took 40 years to build this printing press with some of the objects that they had inside. And so he said in 40 years to build it, and in a matter of days it was all destroyed because of the war, and he was, at the time, he was going to Russia, he was going to different places to look at how they're doing their printing press, to bring that knowledge back to Somalia. So it was the best time of his life, and in a matter of days it was all destroyed. So you really see in these moments what they lost. And then the third part of the film is their life now in Canada. And some of them were able to continue in the same profession, others were not. There was a doctor, an older doctor, he actually came to Canada in the 1980s, before the war, to train Canadian doctors in emergency situations. And so when he came as a refugee, he wasn't able to practice. And he served most of his years now being a translator for people who are meeting a doctor, and he himself is a doctor. So you really, for me, the message was, this is again countering the mainstream narrative of Somalia, of this is what Somalia was like, and it's not just about the war, there's this other story, but also to tell people about the integration and how you have individuals who their lives, their lives were put on hold when they came to Canada, or when they came to Germany, or when they came to Italy, and that they had to restart their lives again, and some of them weren't able to pursue their dreams, and they lost so much. So that's the reality I wanted to show as well, is that, yes, refugees do come to these countries to integrate and to find success, but there's a great sense of loss as well.
Okay. Do you have any plans for the future, for a new film or something like
Yes, yes, I do. I'm actually, this is funny because I feel like my films have been taking a migration route. So in Italy, we looked at living at the border, the lives of African asylum seekers and migrants, and what their life was like coming from Mediterranean to their integration in Italy online through an online platform. And then we had 19 Days, which is Canada and the refugee crisis and how refugees resettle. And now with Memories of Mogadishu, we are looking at what they left behind and what their life is like now. And so this new project I'm trying to work on is a fiction film, actually. So taking away from documentary and moving in a new direction. And I want to look at retirement. So what is it like for someone to, so it'll be a fiction film on retirement, about what happens when they go back to their home countries after 30, 40 years.
So will you film in Somalia maybe? Or
I'm hoping to film in Canada, so I want to, it'll follow a Somali father and daughter story where the father wants to retire and go back to Mogadishu to reclaim his childhood home and relive his life again, because his life was on pause for 30 years as he was integrating and raising his family. And so it's basically a new start. And this is very common, actually. You have many members of the Somali diaspora who are at the age of retirement that are wanting to go back home and to spend the rest of their lives there. Despite the situation, Somalia is getting better, but there's still security challenges there.
okay, that's good, and I hope that when you have it ready,
Yes.
you have another.
Yes, with you. Yes, exactly.
Thank you very much, Asha.
No, thank you so much. It was great chatting with you again. It's great for me because I can reflect on the work as well. And you got great questions.